I want to welcome you guys back to another episode of Pistons Talk Podcast presented by FanDuel. We have a jam-packed episode for you guys tonight. Hope you guys are enjoying your Sunday night. Trade exception. We're going to be looking at 5 targets that Hunter Patterson outlined in one of his athletic articles. If you're not subscribed to Hunter's work over at The Athletic, you definitely should be. Had a great article with John Hollinger as well this week. He's always putting out really good content over there at The Athletic. Definitely should be subscribed to his work. We're getting into the Detroit Pistons trading deadline. Heard from 2 guys on the national side, Brett Siegel from Clutch Points and Jake Fisher, who does work with Mark Stein and his Substack. So what they're hearing, what the Detroit Pistons may do with this trade deadline. Brooklyn Nets at the Detroit Pistons game last night. There were some scouts at the Detroit Pistons game for the Brooklyn Nets. So we're going to be kind of getting into that. Why were there Brooklyn Nets scouts at the Detroit Pistons game last night? Because they don't play the Pistons until February 1st. Wonder why they were there. Also getting into Jaren Jackson Jr. news again on the national side, coming from Michael Scotto. There was a report there and maybe some possible interest from the Pistons side. And then we'll end the podcast with some Eastern Conference All-Star predictions coming from Tim Bontemps of ESPN. Have some Pistons guys in there. Definitely want to get into that and talk about that with you guys for a little bit. And then we'll be previewing the games of the week for the Detroit Pistons. They play 4 times next week. And the game on Monday, I think, is the one game that a lot of Pistons fans are going to be locked in. They play the Boston Celtics, #1 team and the #2 team in the Eastern Conference. Should be a really fun podcast for you guys, but let's get into it. I'm hyped up, as you guys can tell. I've been talking for 2 minutes telling you what we're going to be talking about today, but let's get into it. So, what is a trade exception? Hunter kind of lays this out in his article. Danny LaRue, their athletic cap expert, noted at the time of the trade, Detroit should have $14.1 million to spend with its TPE, plus an extra $250,000 in wiggle room. The TPE allows the Pistons to offer up roughly $14.3 million to opposing teams looking to shed salary by offloading players. Detroit has until July 7th, 2026, a year from when the Schroeder sign and trade became official, to work out a deal to use its trade exception. It's a useful exception that offers the Pistons a chance to bring talent in without having to send a player back out in a trade. However, Detroit would likely have to waive one of its players to make room for a player brought in. I think that's something that we have touched on in the podcast several times. That $14.3 million trade exception is something that I think the Pistons will use at this deadline. I know I said last week, sometimes teams don't use it. I think the Pistons will actually use it. I think that's such a valuable asset for this front office to use in possible trades. But Hunter laid out 5 guys, and we're going to be going over all 5 guys. #1 guy I mentioned last night, he has Bobby Portis, and his explanation for Bobby Portis is this. His salary is $13.4 million with a $15.5 million player option in 27-28. He's 30 years old. He's 6'9", 250 pounds. And I think you just looking at his stats this year, almost 13 points a game, 47% from 3, and 6.5 rebounds in 23 minutes a game. Hunter lays out the irony in this choice, given Portis and Stewart's run during Detroit's second matchup against Milwaukee. But Portis is on pace to tie his career best from beyond the arc and is already fits the Pistons mentality. And I kind of outlined why I would like a Bobby Portis trade if the Pistons were able to strike a deal with Milwaukee. #1, Bobby Portis to me just fits the Detroit Pistons culture. When I look at Bobby Portis, he just seems like a Piston. We're looking for guys that aren't afraid to muck it up, not afraid to dive for loose balls, play defense, protect the paint. That's Bobby Portis to me. He's a true backup power forward. Now, I know Tobias Harris is their starting power forward. And most nights it's a combination of, sometimes it's Stu playing power forward. Sometimes you have Ron Holland or Javonte Green. But having a backup power forward in Bobby Portis out there with Isaiah Stewart together would just cause so much havoc out there, and I would absolutely love it. And Hunter mentioned it earlier. He's shooting 47% from three. That's third best in the NBA right now. That's insane to have a guy that's shooting over 40% from three on good volume. I would absolutely love a Bobby Portis for the Detroit Pistons to use their trade exception. But I honestly think it really depends where Milwaukee is at. And I think that's the conversation I want to have because Milwaukee right now currently is not in the playoff picture. They're 11th. They're sitting right outside that play-in tournament. There's been so many rumblings this year, I would say, with Giannis. Like, is he going to stay? Is he committed to Milwaukee? Does he want to trade? Giannis has said, he wants to stay in Milwaukee. It's all his agent doing all the talking behind the scenes with Shams Charania. Anytime Shams tweets, it's like, yeah, Giannis wants out. Giannis is like, no, I want to stay. So really depends what Milwaukee wants to do. I've had my eye on Bobby Portis for quite some time. I remember talking about him last year with a friend of the show, Corey Woods, when we were kind of talking about, targeting Bobby Portis in a trade because he wasn't on a huge contract. He was shooting pretty good volume from three last season as well, but this year he's just taking it up a whole different level. I really like him as an option for the Pistons. I think he's a player that could easily be out there in a closing situation. Just imagining him and Isaiah Stewart off your bench, and you have like Ron Holland. Oh my God. Like you want to talk about like tough, gritty defensive second units. I don't think any team in the league would want to deal with Bobby Portis and Isaiah Stewart and Ron Holland off the bench. I would absolutely love to see Bobby Portis in a Detroit Pistons uniform. It'll be interesting to see what does happen with the Milwaukee Bucks, what they do at the trade deadline, because there's a lot of rumors about them possibly being linked to players like Zach LaVine, John Morant, just to keep Giannis happy. But keep an eye on Bobby Portis. You never really know what's going to happen in the Central Division with the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, the second player Hunter mentioned was Sam Hauser. Now, Sam Hauser's salary, like we have done on our trade targets, that we did a podcast earlier this month. I've mentioned like the salary he's on. I think it's one of the best value contracts in the NBA. $10 million under contract until 28, 29, 28 years old, 6'7", 217 pounds with a 6'9" wingspan. He's putting up 7.8 points a game on 38.6% three-point shooting, 3.6 rebounds a game in 22 minutes a game. Hauser has grown into a respectable rotational player with the Celtics and is a reliable three-point threat. The Wisconsin native is worth consideration from the Pistons front office, given his length and ability to thrive in his role under Joe Mazzulla. And I kind of gave my three reasons why I would like this move as well. It's another backup power forward option for the Detroit Pistons. Has a great contract and has playoff experience. Now, I think Sam Hauser is like one of those sneaky under the radar guys that doesn't really get talked about on a national level. Playing in Boston, obviously a lot of the spotlight is going to be on Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Derek White, even Peyton Pritchard, former sixth man of the year. But Sam Hauser is just a really good rotational player for the Boston Celtics. But given where the Celtics are at right now, when Brad Stevens recently talked to the media, they're not like really too concerned about trying to shed salary. I would love a Sam Hauser. I just don't really know what Boston would want personally. Obviously, if they're trying to, stay below that luxury tax, being really close to the apron, we saw them shed a lot of salary this past summer with Kristaps Porzingis and Drew Holiday. But I'd be very surprised if Sam Hauser was dealt. But hey, you never know. It could be a sneaky under the radar option, as the Celtics probably like to improve their front court. Because you kind of look at their front court. Like Luka Garza's playing great, probably the best he's ever played in his career. Keita, who was a really good pickup by the Celtics as well, he's playing great. But I think the Celtics would definitely like to upgrade that front court if they could. But never know with Sam Hauser. You never really know. Now, The third option we're going to be talking about is a former Piston, played during the rebuild years, and it's Kelly Olynyk. He currently is with the San Antonio Spurs. He's on a $13.4 million contract. He's 34 years old, 7 foot, 240 pounds, putting up 3 points a game on 47% shooting from the field. He's only getting 10 minutes a game with the Spurs right now. While Olynyk has the least impressive numbers on this list, he also is averaging the fewest minutes. He's seemingly fallen out of the Spurs rotation and is the second most expensive option here. But the former Piston is a career 36.9% shooter from beyond the arc with a history of being a stretch big. Now, obviously, we didn't really get to see Kelly Olynyk play with Cade Cunningham too much, obviously, because he did get injured that year. But I think why I do like this idea for the Pistons as a buy low option is he's a good locker room vet. He's played for numerous teams across the NBA. Um, and anything I hear about Kelly Olynyk is always very positive from talking to reporters or talking to fans that have followed uh, whatever team Kelly Olynyk is a part of. He's familiar with Cade Cunningham and some of the young core guys out there like Stu and those guys, and he can stretch the floor at either a power forward or center position. I do remember when Troy Weaver did sign him, I think a lot of us were saying like, hey, we need to stretch big because we had played Mason Plumlee at starting center before Stu got that starting spot very early in the rebuild. We bring in Kelly Olynyk and then Cade gets hurt, right? But Kelly O, I think would definitely be a very I wouldn't say underwhelming move. I think he could have value. Like the 3 points a game in 10 minutes, I wouldn't actually pay too much attention to that because I think if he were to get brought into Detroit, he would average more than 10 minutes a game because I think JB would probably use him more as a power forward than a center because you have three centers right now. He'd use him as a backup power forward to back up Tobias. And having a guy like that can just pick and pop with the second unit and have more floor spacing with the second unit could add some value, but he's not really a guy that I would be particularly be looking at, but I could understand it from Hunter's perspective of adding a backup front court player that can spread it from the outside and has been here before and has some familiar with the organization. Now, another former Piston got Luke Kennard. Okay, so Luke Kennard is currently with the Atlanta Hawks. He's on an $11 million salary, 29 years old, 6'5", 206. This year at the Hawks, he's putting up almost 8 points a game, 47.5% from three, and 2.3 assists a game in 20.5 minutes. Kennard would be a low-risk option for the Pistons, considering he will be an unrestricted free agent this summer. Excuse me. He was Detroit's lottery pick in 2017, and now he's leading the league in three-point percentage, albeit on 3.3 attempts per game. Kennard's gravity would rival Duncan Robinson's, and he'd be a formidable floor spacer with the second unit. Now, why I like this idea, Luke Kennard's an elite shooter, elite three-point shooter. We all know that. That's the one thing coming out of the draft that I think a lot of scouts had always kind of pointed at Luke Kennard with him. He's just gotten even better at it. He's been on several NBA teams since the Pistons did eventually trade him on draft night. He's a great playmaker. Like the 2.3 assists a game, some of the passes and some of the reads that Luke Kennard can make off the bench for the Detroit Pistons, I think would actually be pretty big considering one, we need 3-point shooting, and two, you need a little bit of playmaking. And Luke Kennard can take on ball reps and set up plays and make some pretty decent reads in my personal opinion. And he knows the organization pretty well. He's pretty familiar with the Detroit Pistons front office and the organization because there are still some people that were there when Luke Kennard was drafted. And I'm talking about Arm Tellem. Arm Tellem was part of the Detroit Pistons front office when Stan Van Gundy did draft him. So there are some players that are not players, but there are some people that still work in this front office that are pretty familiar with Luke Kennard. Now, I think why Luke Kennard could actually be an option is the only reason why Luke Kennard signed with the Hawks is because Trae Young was recruiting him. Trae Young is no longer there. And obviously the Hawks are just such a weird team since this trade. Like the CJ McCollum trade has not really panned out. They're 1-3 since the trade, and CJ has kind of been very underwhelming at best. Um, I like the Luke mention because one, we need more 3-point shooting. Having another 3-point shooter like a Luke Kennard could definitely help. Two, the playmaking. We know that he can pass. We know he can facilitate. Obviously, like 2.3 assists a game is nothing to brag about by any means, but it is something. But I wouldn't really hate a Luke Kennard move by this organization. Now, the last player in this trade exception mentioned by Hunter is Max Christie. Now, if you guys watched my 29 trade targets from 29 NBA teams, you know that I actually had Max Christie as a trade target, and Hunter has him as a TPE target. His salary is 7.7 with a 8.8 player option in 27-28. 22 years old, 6'5", 190, putting up 12.3 points a game on 45.4% shooting from three, 3.4 rebounds a game, and 28.9 minutes per game with the Dallas Mavericks. Not only does Christie fit the Pistons timeline from a youth perspective, but he's also on pace for a career high from distance. Per cleaning the glass, Christie's 45.4% from distance ranks in the 95th percentile for wings across the league. He's a primary off-ball score with 50.6% off of his triples and catch and shoot attempts. Now, why I like Max Christie as well is great three-point shooter, only 22 years old, like Hunter had mentioned, has an improved every season since he's been drafted in the NBA. And like, if you kind of look at his trajectory, like I think this is the type of trade that you would make and you would look very smart because I think when you look at young players, the one thing you look at is improvement, and he's improved every year he's been in the NBA, from barely scoring his rookie season to being a 12-point per game scorer. Like, could he go from 12 to 15 to, eventually maybe closer to 17, 18? I think that's the conversation I would have, and I would buy stock on a Max Christie. I think a lot of people forget, like, he was part of the Luka Doncic trade that the Lakers sent over. And he's been a guy that I've been very impressed with. Don't know where Dallas' season is particularly going. Like there's rumblings that Kyrie Irving might come back. I personally think he shouldn't. Anthony Davis is injured again, and the Dallas has kind of got back to their losing ways. They may look to try to get another high draft pick because outside of this year, they won't have a draft pick for several years. Maybe they can get more lottery luck and get into the lottery, and maybe they would be more open to trading Max Christie to a team that could use his services. And being 22 years old, shooting 45% from three, I think it could definitely be a very, very smart option for the Detroit Pistons. But I mean, those are all five trade exception targets that Hunter did have. Again, Bobby Portis from the Milwaukee Bucks, love that. Sam Hauser from the Celtics, Kelly Olynyk from the Spurs, Luke Kennard from the Atlanta Hawks, and Max Christie from the Dallas Mavericks. Before we get into the trade rumors, I am just going to take a quick water break, and then when I'm done taking a water break, we'll kind of get into the latest Detroit Pistons trade rumors that people are hearing around the league as it does relate to the Detroit Pistons. We'll be right back, you guys. Okay, we are back. We're going to be getting into our second segment, and the second segment has to do with the Detroit Pistons and trade rumors. Now, I was reading an article this week from Clutch Points, national reporter Brett Siegel, and this is what he's hearing from the Detroit Pistons. And it says, despite the rumors existing about the Detroit Pistons possibly looking to capitalize on the success they found during the first half of the season by making an all-in trade at the deadline, multiple league sources have pushed against the Pistons going away from their core group. That includes key secondary talents like Tobias Harris, Jaden Ivey, and Isaiah Stewart. So that's what Brett Siegel is hearing from his sources as it does relate to what the Pistons could possibly do. They're not really looking to make a quote unquote big move right now at the deadline. Now, Jake Fisher had a similar kind of reporting as it does come to the Detroit Pistons trade plan. So I'll put what he had in his article. And this is from Bleacher Report. So it's a little bit, I would say, paraphrasing from Jake's article, but it says, while the Detroit Pistons have the best record in the Eastern Conference, they reportedly might not be significant buyers ahead of the February 5th trade deadline. NBA insider Jake Fisher reported Thursday the Pistons continue to message they aren't in any hurry to sacrifice draft capital or significant trade equity to make a major in-season addition. Fisher noted that they are looking to keep their cap sheet clean as possible, knowing Jalen Duren and Asar Thompson could be in line for new deals. He also added the front office is, at the very least, known to be gauging the market for the fourth-year guard, Jaden Ivey, who is headed to restricted free agency this summer. The Pistons have been of the revelation of this season at the point of a 28-10 record, 29-10 now, and a bright future. So it isn't particularly surprising they aren't necessarily jumping at the chance to break up their young core for a short-term addition at the deadline. Making sure Duren and Thompson are a part of their core for years to come figures to be one of the top priorities, even if it means passing on noteworthy additions of or two this season. So we can kind of just put both of these trade reports together as a whole, right? So I think what Brett said, like the Pistons aren't really looking to make that all-in move, that all-in splash, and they value guys like Tobias Harris, Isaiah Stewart, Jaden Ivey, where Jake kind of mentions like, yeah, like the Pistons want to keep their cap sheet clean. They want to make sure that they have enough money to one extend Jalen Duren. And we've kind of talked about Jalen Duren's extension. Like obviously him or Jaden Ivey weren't able to sign new contracts with the Detroit Pistons, and they're both looking to get extended. Now, we haven't really got a ballpark figure on like what Jaden Ivey and his camp wants, but we have gotten multiple ballpark figures from Jalen Duren's camp. Like we've heard 30 million, we've heard 35, and as the season has gone on, we've heard 40 million. So I think the Detroit Pistons definitely want to keep their cap flexibility open, and possibly making an all-in move could kind of make it a little bit more difficult to, give him the contract that he wants. Now, it all depends if you feel that Jalen Duren's a $35-40 million center. I'll leave that up to you guys. I personally, I don't really know. Like, I like Jalen Duren on this team. I like him being a lob threat for Cade Cunningham, being a guy that he looks to often. But I just don't really know right now. I'd have to think about it for a couple of days, in terms of like if I think that's kind of an overpay or if it's just right. But kind of getting back to the Detroit Pistons trade plans at this trade deadline, they want to keep that cap flexibility open for one, Jalen Duren, extending him, and then Asar Thompson, will be extension eligible not this summer but the following summer. So you have to worry about like what it would cost to keep Asar Thompson. And obviously, eventually 2 summers from now, then you got to worry about Ron Holland, right? So I think the Pistons want to keep this core intact, if they can, if it's possible. We all know they can't keep everyone. Someone will be a casualty, to this roster. They can't keep all the young guys that they currently have, but it sounds like they're pretty reserved. Like I think during the season, a lot of the message from the Pistons front office down to the media is like they're not really looking to make a big splash. They're not really looking to trade serious young pieces or I guess draft capital for a player right now. It might be this summer personally. It could be during the draft, could be this summer where I think it makes more sense because then you get like a full training camp and you get some preseason games to kind of just, grow and gel with your teammates. But it's kind of sounding like the message right now on January 18th is the Pistons are looking to be. I wouldn't say they wouldn't be buyers, but I would say that they would look to, add some players. They can help them in certain areas like three-point shooting, maybe a secondary ball handler for the second unit. Who knows? Who really knows? But that's kind of like what the message was with both Brett Siegel and Jake Fisher. Now, Brett also mentioned something, and he was playing devil's advocate a little bit. And he said if the Pistons plans change, look at this player. So he wrote in his article this week, should this mentality change with the Pistons, keep a close eye on Trajan Langdon and the front office targeting Trey Murphy III from the New Orleans Pelicans, even though the Pels continue to signal to teams that they aren't interested in trading the wing. Perhaps a utility guard like Ao DeSumo in Chicago, who could do a little bit of everything, would be perfect for this team. Head coach JB Bickerstaff values the addition of veterans on his roster like Duncan Robinson and Karis LeVert this season, and the Pistons have exceeded expectations by miles by nearing 20 games above 500 at the top of the East standings. With that said, there is still a possibility that Detroit searches the market for a perimeter-oriented threat and another playmaker behind Kate Cunningham. The Pistons own plenty of second-round picks. They have a $14.1 million trade exception from the Dennis Schroeder sign-in trade this offseason, which can be utilized to absorb a contract. So Brett was kind of saying, like, if the Pistons do change their mind, and that can happen as you kind of get closer to this trading deadline on February 5th. Like, front offices are going to talk with each other. I'm sure Trajan Langdon has talked with Tom Gores and everyone else in that front office of like what they think they should do with this trade deadline. As of right now, we've gotten a lot of reporting that the Pistons are looking to add on the margins. If they can get better with more three-point shooting, like Brett mentioned, more playmaking. Like, I love the DeSumo mention. He could definitely be a guy that could be gettable. You never really know with the Chicago Bulls. I mean, we've talked about Kobe White as well. Chicago is currently sitting at the 10 seed, playing tournament team, but I mean, maybe that's a guy that the Pistons could look at in Ao DeSumo. I've always liked him from afar. Maybe he could be a guy that the Pistons could target. But sounds like the trade plans for this team and this organization right now are going to be pretty reserved. I think the word that they've used multiple times in articles that I've read is opportunistic. And I keep mentioning this player like Dennis Schroeder, like that type of move, I think is what the Pistons will probably be looking at. That was a multiple team trade, and they put themselves in a multiple team trade, and they were very savvy with getting a guy at the time that was the best backup point guard on the market. So maybe the Pistons can definitely kind of look at that. Also use their trade exception. And like Brett mentioned, the Pistons have a lot of second round picks. Like, I had to look it up. I didn't realize how many second round picks that they've actually have acquired since Trajan Langdon has gotten here. Like, they have a lot of second round picks that they can use. And I've seen in previous trade deadlines, like teams, throw in 3 to 5 second round picks for a rotational player. Like, could Trajan do that? It's a strong possibility. You never really know. Just don't pull the Milwaukee Bucks sending 5 first-round picks for Jake Crowder and then not playing them. Just don't do that. As I still remember that. I don't know if you guys remember that a few years ago. They traded like 5 seconds for Jake Crowder and then never played the guy. It was just mind-boggling to me. But I don't think JB Bickerstaff or Trajan Langdon would do that. But I was just thinking of like second-round picks at the trade deadline in previous years. I don't know why it came in my head when I started mentioning second round picks with this team, but yeah, man, it's honestly crazy. It's honestly crazy. So the next thing we're going to be talking about is the Brooklyn Nets. Now, I got tagged in a post on Twitter last night as we were playing the Pacers, and I'm going to put the tweet that I got tagged in. Kuka Hill from Locked On Pistons also got tagged. Shout out to Tom, Korean Piston fan, Pistons Worldwide. He got tagged. Kofi, one of my favorite Twitch streamers, he got tagged. And my guy Pistons Thoughts over in California. So the tweet says that Kareem, who owns the Detroit Pistons subreddit, said he saw Nets scouts at the game. And basically what the post from Reddit said that he was at the game today and noticed a pretty large group of Brooklyn Nets scouts, around 5 of them, all sitting together in the same row of section 101. I walked up to them during the break and jokingly said, "Thanks for Michael Porter Jr." And one of the guys laughed and replied, "Hopefully," and didn't make us fly here for nothing. As soon as he said that, a couple other guys with him looked visibly annoyed, like he wasn't supposed to say that out loud. Could be nothing, could be something. Just thought it was interesting. He also had an edit on Reddit. If you guys are part of the Detroit Pistons subreddit, adding more context since this got posted on Twitter. I didn't take the picture because they were dressed normally and had badges that said Brooklyn Nets Media. They weren't decked out head to toe in Nets gear, where it would have been obvious or easy to snap a photo without being weird about it. Obviously, take anything you read on the internet with a grain of salt. I'm not asking anyone to blindly believe me. That said, multiple people around me saw them as well. I've been part of this community for nearly a decade and have worked with the Pistons hundreds of times, specifically for this subreddit, and I really have no reason to make something this random. I've been active as well known here for a long time. So Kareem is just kind of stating like, hey, like I saw some Brooklyn Nets scouts, at the game, went up to him, talked to him. Now, like, listen, like this tweet alone, again, like he said, like take this with a grain of salt. Okay. Now, this is where the plot thickens a little bit. Okay. Now, I had retweeted what I was tagged in from this Detroit Piston fan. And this morning, I was checking my followers on Twitter. And look who I got followed by. Now, this is a screenshot from my Twitter followers. A guy named Ryan Winters. He's a pro scout from the Brooklyn Nets. Okay. Now, I've never interacted with this guy whatsoever. He works for the Brooklyn Nets, and he followed me. He followed Pistons Talk on Twitter. I'm just going to leave that there. I'll let you guys decide. Now, we've talked about Michael Porter Jr. several times on this podcast, you guys. I think from a basketball perspective, he fits with this team like a glove. The three-point shooting, the secondary option that he could be, the scouts that were apparently at the Detroit Pistons game, and then I get followed by a Brooklyn Nets scout. I don't know, man. I really don't know. Maybe it's something, maybe it's nothing. But I did want to bring this to your guys' attention. I know we just talked about the Detroit Pistons and like what the media is hearing from their front office, that they're looking not to make any big swings or big moves ahead of this deadline. I don't really know what the asking price for Michael Porter Jr. is. I have stated my opinion. I did it last week with Eric Vincent. I still think it's 2 first. I still think you would have to throw Tobias in there to make the money work. And you're probably attaching one of your young assets, whether that's like a Jaden Ivey, Marcus Sasser, Ron Holland. I think that's probably like what it would take to get Michael Porter Jr. out of Brooklyn. Obviously, the Brooklyn Nets want to have the best possible odds to win the NBA draft this year. This is a very good draft coming up. And obviously, Michael Porter Jr. Might kind of get them out of those top 4, top 5 odds that they want to have. He could be on the move. I've seen the Golden State Warriors. First, they were mentioned that they were interested. Then the Brooklyn Nets said we've had no communication with the Warriors. Now the Warriors are interested. I really don't know what to believe. Like, it's just this time of year. Like, don't believe everything you read off the internet. But I did want to kind of bring it to your attention that a Brooklyn Nets scout all of a sudden followed me, and I've never interacted with this guy whatsoever. Kind of interesting. I'll just say that. I'll just say that. Before we get into the Jaren Jackson Jr. news, I want to talk to you guys about some of the FanDuel odds right now for the Detroit Pistons. Now, if we look to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals, the New York Knicks are still favorites. I don't know how they are still favorites. That NBA Cup curse is real. They do not look like the same team. Their defense has fallen off a cliff, but FanDuel still has them as the odds-on favorite to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals at a plus 115. The Pistons are right behind them at a plus 140. Then they have the Celtics at a plus 180. Cavs, again, I don't really understand the Cavs side, plus 250. The Magic at a plus 460. The 76ers at a plus 500. And the Miami Heat at a plus 700. And then we look over to the right, the finals winner. Pistons are also mentioned in this. Oklahoma City Thunder right now are the odds-on favorite with a plus 115, followed by the Denver Nuggets at a plus 700. San Antonio Spurs at a plus 1,300. Knicks again at a plus 1,300. Houston Rockets at a plus 1,300. Detroit Pistons plus 1,700 to not only make the finals, but win the finals. And the Boston Celtics plus 1,800. And the Cavs a plus 2,200. Did want to kind of talk about it for a couple of minutes with you guys. I honestly think that the Detroit Pistons eventually are going to be the odds-on favorite to make it out of the East and make the Eastern Conference Finals. I really feel that. I really believe that. I think it's just like the New York media and the hype with the Knicks personally. Like, I don't like when I see like a lot of these odds and I see a lot of these like tier list of like teams to, make it out of the East. The Pistons, like at the beginning of the season, they're like way down. And since they've been the number 1 seed for over 70 plus days, they have not really been at the top at number 1, even though they are number 1 in the East. They've kind of been like 2-3. They're still around 2-3. But hey, man, the way that they're playing right now, the defense is just up since 2026. Only averaging around 103, 102 points a game. That's probably closer to 100 after the 76ers, excuse me. The Pacers only dropped 78 points against the Pistons last night in a dominating 40-point win. But man, Pistons defense has looked really good in January. I think it's going to be tested this upcoming week. But let's get into Jaren Jackson Jr. news, okay? Now, I saw this report. This comes from a friend of mine, Michael Scotto, who does work at Hoopsite. Shout out to you, Mike. Hope you're doing well. And he had a report, and this is what it says. It says, Ja Morant trade talks and Jaren Jackson remain the players the Memphis Grizzlies want to build around, according to ESPN's report. However, that stance hasn't stopped various teams around the league from registering interest in Jackson Jr.'s, including the Detroit Pistons and Boston Celtics, league sources told Hoopsite. With the possibility of Morant being traded before the deadline, a potential prolonged injury recovering from starting center Zach Edey, Memphis could focus on developing its young talent such as Cedric Cowherd, Cam Spencer, and Jalen Wells, while potentially landing another high lottery pick in the process this season. Looking ahead, Jackson Jr. is owed a combined $205 million over the next 4 seasons, including a player option in 29-30. Having an all-star candidate and an all-defensive caliber player under control through his prime will appeal many teams around the league. If Morant is indeed traded before the deadline, it expects more teams to call about Jaren Jackson Jr. more intensely. So I feel like we've talked about Jaren Jackson Jr. on post-game podcasts before because I think a lot of us look at the power forward position as a position that we need to upgrade and we need to kind of have locked down. Since we have Cade Cunningham, he just signed his contract extension recently. He's going to be making $50 million starting next season. Currently making 46 right now. Jaren Jackson Jr. making 35 million right now. That goes up to 49 million. And then it progressively goes up to like 50, 52, 53. I think my stance on Jaren Jackson Jr. would be this, and this is the question I would have if I could actually talk to a Detroit Pistons front office member. If you move for Jaren Jackson Jr., does that mean that you feel your window is like a 3 to 4 year window to one, make it out of the Eastern Conference, and two, try to win a championship? Because I think if you have Cade Cunningham at $50 million on your books, Jaren Jackson Jr. $50 million on your books, that's 100 million right there. Jalen Duren, we're assuming that he's still part of this core in any type of trade. I doubt the Pistons want to give up Jalen Duren. We talked about earlier, reports are anywhere from 35 to 40 million. Let's say it's closer to 40 million. So that's $140 million on three players, right? So that would tell me that the Pistons' depth that we know to love and admire, you wouldn't have as much depth if you were to trade for a Jaren Jackson Jr. Now, I think the appeal with him is the defensive prowess that he has, winning Defensive Player of the Year, rim protection. We understand that with Jaren Jackson Jr. And his ability to stretch the floor and hit 3-point shots. And I think the Pistons have always really wanted a big front court. Like, this isn't something new. And like, we've seen it several years. Like, they tried to have a big front court with Andre Drummond and Greg Monroe. Obviously, that didn't work out. Years later, it was Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond. We even tried the double bigs with Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren. And now there's rumors that the Pistons are at least interested in seeing what it could take to land a Jaren Jackson Jr. in the front court. So this organization, I think, has always wanted the big front court. And I think the way I look at it, it's kind of the way the league is going. I mean, you see what OKC is doing with Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein. You know, they're just kind of matching up with size. Not Oklahoma. I just said Oklahoma City. The Houston Rockets kind of do that with Steven Adams and Alperen Sengun as well. And I think if you're Detroit, like, you're already a very physical, dominating team. Adding a guy like Jaren Jackson Jr. Would just kind of amplify that. But again, like, with the contract, I think it comes a little bit more difficult to sign extensions with the Sar Thompson and Ron Holland in the near future, assuming they're not part of the trade, because I think a trade for Jaren Jackson Jr. Isn't going to be cheap by any means. Like, I think a trade for Jaren Jackson Jr. is multiple first-round draft picks and probably a young guy or two to get him away from Memphis. I mean, Memphis has said firsthand that they're looking to kind of build around him ever since they gave him that extension. But did want to bring it to your guys' attention. Again, Pistons and the Boston Celtics are the two teams that are interested in Jaren Jackson Jr. Boston would be kind of interesting as well, considering like how many guys that they have right now, especially Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum being on those massive deals. Boston would have to send a lot of salary just to even make this like contractively work. But I think that's the type of player that they would definitely kind of look at to strengthen their front court. But I also think, like, if the Clippers are ever willing to sell off on Zubac, I think that's kind of a cheaper option for them if they want to get a center that would kind of like match like what they're trying to do. But they do kind of want to just talk about the Jaren Jackson stuff for a little bit. Now, I mentioned earlier ESPN All-Stars. Now, Tim Bontemps earlier this week had wrote an article, kind of like predictions with the starters. So his starters for the Detroit Pistons, and I also made a graphic for you guys to follow along. So you would have Giannis Antetokounmpo being a starter, Cade Cunningham, Jalen Brunson, Tyrese Maxey, and Jaylen Brown as Eastern Conference starters. And this is just a prediction. We don't know who the starters are going to be. I know the fan votes right now. Cade has been in the top 4. He's been getting a lot of votes. The Knicks have several guys in the top 20 as well. But this is kind of like what Tim Bontemps of ESPN is predicting for the ESPN starters. Now, for the reserves, he only picked 4 players, and the reserves he has are Donovan Mitchell from the Cleveland Cavaliers, Jalen Johnson from the Atlanta Hawks, Scotty Barnes from the Toronto Raptors, and Jalen Duren from the Detroit Pistons. Now, he also mentioned guys like Michael Porter Jr. is kind of like bubble guys that could possibly make the reserves. But I found it interesting that he had not only Cade Cunningham as a starter, which I think he will be, just the season he's having. You have to reward it being the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference right now. And Jalen Duren. I just want to say something. And maybe it's just me reading the comments. Maybe I just kind of overanalyze it a little bit too much. But if you guys follow the Detroit Pistons on social media, specifically Twitter, okay? The Pistons had Slam Magazine night for Jalen Duren. He was on the cover of Slam Magazine. Shout out to JD for that. Really cool that we had another Piston on a Slam Magazine cover. But the video they posted got so many millions of views. And like, I was like, wow, why is Jalen Duren getting that many views? And you read the comments, and it's a bunch of middle-aged women talking about how fine Jalen Duren is. And like a lot of the comments from Pistons fans saying, like, oh, you're whoring out Jalen Duren for all-star votes. But I thought it was funny, honestly, man. Like, if you guys have not seen that video, definitely check it out. It's honestly hilarious. The comment section and all the women just drilling over Jalen Duren. Maybe it worked. Maybe that's the push that Jalen Duren needs to make the all-star team. I definitely think he will get voted in on by the NBA coaches, because you have to reward Jalen Duren for the season that he is having. Obviously, he has dropped off a little bit in production since the start of the season, but it seems like he's starting to pick it back up as of late. But I just wanted to talk about that. Like that Slam Magazine video was honestly kind of crazy. Like I think the video got like close to 10 million views from the Pistons social team. And like the comments itself were just comical to just honestly see. Oh my god. Okay, we're gonna wrap this podcast up, and we're gonna be previewing next week's games. So next week's games for the Detroit Pistons. We're going to be playing the Boston Celtics at home on the 19th of January, which is tomorrow. Should be a really good game, you guys. This is going to be an NBC Peacock game. So nationally televised game. The number 1 and number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference going head-to-head again for the 3rd straight time. This should just be, I think, almost like a playoff atmosphere. Boston plays games like they're in the playoffs. Last game went down to the wire. So far, the season series is 1-1. This would be a very good opportunity for the Detroit Pistons to beat Boston at home and have a 2-1 series over them, because Boston right now is just playing great ball. But should be a really fun game. If you're going out to the game, definitely have fun, enjoy it. I'm sure it'll just be crazy down there at LCA. Pistons do get a couple of days off. They have one road game. They're going to see the New Orleans Pelicans on the 21st at 8 p.m. away. Pelicans obviously are struggling. This should be a game I think that they should definitely look to take advantage of, a team that isn't playing with a whole lot of confidence right now. Obviously, we understand that, they have NBA talent. They just struggle to win basketball games, but that should be a very winnable game, if you do ask me, on the 21st against the Pelicans at the Smoothie King Center in Louisiana. Then the Pistons get a day off, and they host the Houston Rockets at home. This will be the Detroit Pistons' first Amazon Prime game, you guys. So that is something to definitely look forward to. I also saw that the Detroit Pistons got another Prime game on their schedule against the Wolves later in the season. So Amazon Prime has picked up a few Pistons games this year. So really interested to see how they do against the Houston Rockets. I know the first time we played the Houston Rockets, we beat them. It was very early on in the season. If you guys remember, Jalen Duren rocked the Men Thompson. Like he hit him upside the head, got ejected. But it'll be interesting to see how the Pistons and Cade Cunningham go up against KD, Men Thompson and Alperen Sengun on the Rockets. That'll be a home game too. That's going to be such a good game, such a good game. Really excited to see like what does happen against the Houston Rockets. It's always fun to play them. Kind of feels like almost like rivalries, but like more like fan rivalries, if you ask me, not organizational rivalries, because you got the Twins. Obviously, you had Jalen Green and Cade for a little bit, but it seems like every time we play the Rockets, it's just like uh civil war on like timeline, especially on Twitter, because the fan bases just do not like each other ever since Nick Henkel called Jalen Green a loser and they got his Twitter like taken down. Like, it's just been civil war since then. And then they end the week with the Sacramento Kings on Sunday. This will be an early Sunday game, 3 o'clock. Last time we played the Kings, that was a very highly contested offensive game. I know Isaiah Stewart wasn't really too pleased with the defense, but get to see the Sacramento Kings to end the week. And just kind of looking at the schedule, I mean, like really good games. I'm really looking forward to the Boston and the Rockets game. Let me know what you guys are looking forward to this week. But hopefully I didn't waste too much of your Sunday. We almost went on for over an hour by myself. Guarantee you, if I would have invited a guest, this thing would have been 2 hours. At least, at least. That's why I didn't want to invite a guest on because I know when I do have other people on, like Eric or Sean or Zarek or other guests that I've had on, like we can ramble, we can go down rabbit holes on this podcast. But I do appreciate you guys tapping on in with us as you always do throughout the season. I think this was like what 4 podcasts this week. We're doing around 4 to 5 podcasts throughout the season this week for you guys. And I absolutely love it. Like during the season, man, I love doing podcasts with you guys because it's a lot easier to find content. You guys know during the summer I struggle to find content. It's really bad, but I appreciate all you guys watching. Hope you guys are staying safe, staying warm. Hopefully you're not, having, sore throats and colds like I currently am. But we will see you guys on our post game show tomorrow against the Boston Celtics. Can't wait to talk to you guys then. As always, go Pistons. Peace.